So if I could go back and sit down with my 18-year-old self and just have one honest conversation about money, not the vague stuff, not the generic save more, spend less advice, but the real things, the specific things, the things that actually matter, this is what I would say. And look, I know everyone has a version of this conversation in their head. The things you wish someone had told you earlier. The mistakes you made that felt small at the time and turned out to be expensive. The things you figured out way later than you should have. But here's the thing that I think makes this conversation worth having out loud. Most 18-year-olds are not getting this information anywhere. Not from school, not in a useful practical way, from their parents, not from the culture around them, which is mostly telling them to spend money on things that make them look and feel good right now. And by the time most people figure this stuff out on their own, they've already made some of the expensive mistakes. They've already lost some years of compounding. They've already paid some unnecessary interest. They've already absorbed some habits that take real effort to unlearn. So this is the conversation, 25 things, real ones. The stuff that actually matters when you're 18 and your entire financial future is still completely open. Let's go. Not because of what it pays, because of what it teaches you about yourself and money. Your first real paycheck is the first time you have to make a real decision about what to do with your own money. And whatever habit you build in that first job, whatever relationship with money you establish, it tends to follow you for a long time. The people who start investing even a small amount from their very first real paycheck build a habit and an identity around being someone who invests. And that identity compounds just like money does. The people who spend everything from the first paycheck tend to spend everything from the second one too. And the 10th and the 100th, not because they're irresponsible people, but because the habit of spending everything was established early. And habits are powerful. Your first job is the moment to build the right habit. Even if it's $50 a month, even if it feels embarrassingly small. Start the habit at the beginning. When you're 18, your lifestyle costs almost nothing. You might be living at home or in a dorm. Your expectations are low because they've always been low. And that is actually a massive financial advantage that almost nobody uses, because as income goes up, first job, better job, promotions, raises, the lifestyle has a way of expanding to match it, almost automatically, without any conscious decision. The apartment gets nicer, the car gets better, the dining out gets more frequent, the clothes get more expensive. And before you know it, you're making 3 times what you made at 22, and you have nothing more left over at the end of the month because the lifestyle grew to consume every raise. The advantage you have at 18 is that your lifestyle expectations are still low. And if you can build the habit of investing before the lifestyle inflates, if you can capture some portion of every income increase before it becomes lifestyle, you will end up dramatically wealthier than the version of you that let lifestyle eat everything. At 18, you probably have no credit history, which means no credit score, which means you're financially invisible to lenders in a way that will matter when you want to rent an apartment or finance a car or eventually buy a house. Building credit early is not complicated. Get one credit card. Use it for small purchases you would make anyway. Pay the full balance every single month without exception. Never carry a balance. Never miss a payment. Do that for 2 or 3 years, and you'll have a solid credit history that will save you money on every loan you ever take for the rest of your life. The people who ignore this at 18 and 19 and 20 spend years later trying to build credit from scratch at exactly the moments when they need it most. It's a much harder problem to solve retroactively than it is to just do right from the beginning. I know this one might be too late for some people watching this, but if you're 18 and making decisions about school and loans, please take the loan amount seriously. Student loans cannot be discharged in bankruptcy in most cases. They follow you. They affect your debt to income ratio, which affects your ability to buy a house. They affect your monthly cash flow for years or decades after graduation. The degree matters. The cost of the degree also matters. A $200,000 degree that gets you a $45,000 salary is a very different mathematical proposition than a $40,000 degree that gets you the same outcome. I'm not saying don't go to school. I'm saying the financial reality of the loan needs to be part of the decision in a way that most 18-year-olds are not equipped to think about clearly. We've talked about compound interest a lot in this channel, so I won't spend a ton of time here. But the 18-year-old version of this lesson is this. Every financial decision you make is either putting compound interest on your side or putting it against you. Investing puts it on your side. Carrying credit card debt puts it against you. There is no neutral ground. And the earlier you understand this, the more years you have of it working in your favor rather than against you. At 18, social comparison is at an absolute peak. What other people have, what other people wear, what other people drive, what other people's lives look like from the outside. The pressure to match or exceed what people around you seem to have is relentless. And it is one of the most effective wealth destroying forces in existence, because keeping up with what other people appear to have means spending money you don't have on things you don't need to impress people who aren't paying as much attention as you think. And the people you're trying to impress are often themselves going into debt to appear impressive to someone else. The wealthy people I've studied and read about almost universally stopped caring about external financial appearances early. They drove reasonable cars. They lived in reasonable houses. They wore regular clothes. And they invested the difference. The comparison trap is a trap. The people who escape it early keep dramatically more of their money. At 18, an emergency fund sounds boring and unnecessary. Nothing catastrophic is happening. Life is relatively simple. What are you saving for emergencies for? But here's the thing about emergencies. They don't announce themselves. They just happen. And when they happen, without any financial cushion behind you, the options are all bad. Go into debt. Call your parents. Miss rent. Some version of crisis that reverberates beyond the emergency itself. Even $1,000 in a savings account that you commit to never touching except for genuine emergencies changes the experience of an unexpected expense from a crisis to an inconvenience. Build it early. Keep it separate from money you're allowed to spend. Never touch it for non-emergencies. And rebuild it immediately if you ever do use it. This one took me longer to really understand than it should have. Most people treat their income as a given. This is what I make. This is what I have to work with. The financial planning happens within that constraint. But your income is actually a variable. It's influenced by decisions you make, the skills you build, the industry you're in, the risks you take, the hustle you apply outside your day job, the career moves you make or don't make. At 18, you are at the absolute beginning of your earning potential. The ceiling is not visible, and investing in skills and career moves that increase your income, business, or even at some short-term cost, can be one of the highest return investments you ever make. A $10,000 raise that compounds over a 40-year career at even modest saving rates produces an enormous amount of wealth, more than most individual investment decisions. Income is the fuel, and fuel is worth investing in. At 18, taxes feel like something the government does to you. Money comes in, some goes out for taxes, you have what's left. But understanding even the basics of how taxes work creates real opportunities to legally keep more of your money. Tax-advantaged accounts, Roth IRAs, 401ks, exist specifically to help regular people pay less tax on their investing. And the earlier you start using them, the more decades of tax-advantaged growth you capture. The Roth IRA in particular is almost criminally underutilized by young people. Investing in a Roth at 18 means decades of completely tax-free growth. The government will never touch those returns. And starting at 18 rather than 28 means 10 extra years of that tax-free compounding. When you're 18 or 19 or 20, your lifestyle is often genuinely cheap. You might be sharing housing. Your social life is inexpensive. Your expectations are calibrated to low income levels. You don't have the mortgage and the kids and the car payments and all the obligations that come later. Those cheap years are a gift because you can invest a meaningful percentage of a modest income and it doesn't dramatically change your quality of life. As life gets more expensive, which it will, the ability to invest a large percentage of income gets harder. So the years when it's easy to do it are the most valuable ones. Most people use the cheap years to spend freely because they finally have their own money. The people who use the cheap years to invest aggressively are buying decades of compounding at the lowest cost their life will ever allow. I'm going to be pretty direct about this one. A new car with a loan in your 20s is one of the most reliably wealth-destroying decisions you can make. You're taking on debt for a rapidly depreciating asset at the exact stage of life when that debt and those monthly payments are most damaging to your ability to invest and build wealth. A reliable used car bought outright or with minimal financing does the same job. Gets you to work, gets you around, and costs a fraction of what the new car costs, including the interest. I know it doesn't feel as good. I know the comparison pressure is real, but the person driving the modest used car and investing the difference is building real wealth, while the person in the nice new financed car is doing the opposite. Both are driving somewhere. Only one of them is getting anywhere financially. We've talked about this a lot on this channel, but it's worth saying specifically to the 18-year-old version of this conversation. How much you make and how much wealth you build are two completely different things. This cannot be overstated. You will meet people in your life who earn enormous amounts of money and have almost nothing saved, and you will meet people who earned modest incomes their entire careers and retired with millions. The difference is almost never the income. It's what was done with the income. This one sounds a little harsh, but it's real. If everyone around you spends freely, lives for right now, has no savings, carries credit card debt, that becomes normalized. It becomes the baseline. And human beings are powerfully influenced by what's normal in their social environment. If the people around you invest, talk about financial goals, make intentional decisions about money, that becomes normalized instead. You don't need to completely overhaul your social circle based on their financial habits, but being aware of how your environment shapes your financial behavior and intentionally seeking out people who have a healthier relationship with money is worth taking seriously. We covered the Alex and Jordan comparison in detail in a previous video. I won't redo all the math here, but the core message for the 18-year-old is this. The $50 you invest at 18 is worth more than the $500 you invest at 35. Not because $50 is impressive, because time does something to money that nothing else can replicate. Start now. Start small if necessary. Increase over time, but start now. The word budget makes most 18-year-olds want to immediately change the subject. It sounds boring and restrictive and adult in the worst way. But a budget doesn't have to be a complicated spreadsheet with dozens of categories and daily tracking and guilt about every coffee. The simplest version that actually works is this. Know what comes in. Know what the fixed expenses are. Decide how much goes to investing. Spend the rest however you want without guilt. That's it. Income minus fixed expenses minus investment contribution equals money you can do whatever you want with. And knowing that number means you're spending freely within a framework that actually builds wealth rather than just hoping things work out. Not a money lesson exactly, but an important one. Financial stress is uniquely corrosive. It affects your relationships, your physical health, your mental health, your ability to focus and perform at work, your sleep, your general sense of well-being. And building financial stability, even in small amounts, even slowly, is one of the most effective things you can do for your overall quality of life in ways that have nothing directly to do with money. The $1,000 emergency fund doesn't just protect you from a specific emergency. It slightly lowers your baseline anxiety about everything. The $10,000 investment account doesn't just grow. It creates a sense of security that bleeds into how you carry yourself in every area of life. Financial health is not separate from mental and physical health. They're deeply connected. And starting to build financial stability at 18 is an investment in every other dimension of your life. Most people accept the first number offered, especially at 18 or 22, when any salary feels like validation and negotiating feels presumptuous or risky. But almost every initial salary offer has room to move. And negotiating effectively before accepting a job, rather than waiting for a raise after you've already committed, is one of the highest leverage financial moves you can make. A $5,000 salary increase at 22 that you negotiate at the start of a job is not just $5,000. It's a higher base for every raise and promotion that follows. It's potentially $100,000 or more in additional lifetime earnings, depending on how long you're in that career track. Ask. The worst they say is no, and even then you're no worse off than if you'd never asked. Consumer culture has done an incredible job of normalizing debt. Car payments are normal. Credit card balances are normal. Buy now, pay. Later on, everything is normal. And it's one of the most expensive normalizations in modern life. Every dollar you pay in interest is a dollar that isn't compounding in your favor. It's working against you. And at 18, with potentially 50 years of financial life ahead of you, the compounding effect of avoiding debt versus carrying it is absolutely enormous. Not all debt is equally bad. A low interest rate mortgage on an appreciating asset is very different from a 25% credit card. But the habit of not carrying consumer debt, of only spending money you actually have, is one of the most valuable financial habits you can build at 18. We covered this in a previous video, and I know it can feel repetitive, but for an 18-year-old who has never invested and is hearing conflicting messages about whether the stock market is safe or a casino, this is worth saying clearly. Buying broad market index funds and holding them for decades is not gambling. It is betting on the overall economy continuing to function and grow. That is a fundamentally different risk profile than picking individual stocks or trading options or anything that gets lumped in with gambling in most people's mental models. The stock market has returned roughly 10% per year on average over the last century, through world wars and depressions and pandemics and everything else. That track record is about as solid as anything in finance gets. At 18, willpower is not your most reliable resource. It isn't for anyone, but especially not at 18 when there are 400 other things competing for your attention and energy. The solution is to remove the decision from the equation wherever possible. Set up automatic investments, automatic savings contributions, automatic bill payments so you never pay a late fee. Automatic everything. When the right behavior happens automatically without requiring a decision every month, it stops being a discipline problem and becomes just how your financial life works. And systems beat willpower every single time over long periods. At 18, insurance feels pointless. You're young, you're healthy, nothing bad is going to happen. But as you start building assets and income and obligations, the health insurance, renter's insurance, eventually car and home insurance, protecting what you've built is as important as building it. One significant uninsured event can wipe out years of careful wealth building. The insurance premium is the cost of making sure that doesn't happen. Not in a boring textbook way, but genuinely understanding how money works, how compound interest works, how taxes work, how investing works, is the information that pays dividends for your entire life. One good book about personal finance at 18 can change the trajectory of your financial life more than almost any other single investment of time. The knowledge compounds just like money does. This one is a little more philosophical, but I think it's real. Every time you choose to invest instead of spend, you're doing something for a future version of yourself. You're making a decision that says, the person I'm going to be in 20 years matters. Their options matter. Their security matters. And every time you blow money on something that doesn't really matter to satisfy an impulse in the present, you're making a different statement about how much you care about who you're going to become. The people who build real wealth over time tend to have a strong sense of their future selves as real people worth making sacrifices for. The people who struggle financially often have a hard time feeling that future self as real enough to prioritize. The financial media, the ads, the influencers, a lot of the people talking loudly about how to make money are primarily trying to take yours. Financial products are sold, not bought, meaning the most profitable ones for the companies selling them are often not the most beneficial ones for the people buying them. The simplest strategies, broad market index funds, consistent contributions, long time horizons, are boring enough that nobody makes much money selling them to you, which is one reason they don't get marketed aggressively and one reason they work so well. Be skeptical of complexity. Be skeptical of guaranteed returns. Be skeptical of anyone whose financial advice also involves them making a commission. Okay, last one. And I'm going to keep it short because I've been saying versions of this throughout the entire video. All of the information in the world is useless without action. And the most common thing that turns information into inaction is the feeling that you need to understand more before you can start, that you need to have it all figured out, that you need to find the perfect strategy before committing. You don't. You need to open an account, put some money in it, set up an automatic contribution, buy a simple broad market index fund. That's it. That's enough to start. Everything else can be refined and improved over time, but the starting has to happen, and it has to happen before you feel completely ready, because completely ready is not a real destination. It's just a moving target that keeps the starting from happening. 18-year-old you has an advantage that no amount of money can buy later. Time, the most valuable ingredient in building wealth. Use it.